Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here, here at Recirculation, which is a project of Word Up Community Bookshop. Word Up, which is the bookshop, which is like a 10-minute, 15-minute walk from here, our main location, started as a pop-up shop in 2011. And it was supposed to just be a month-long project, but there was a lot of community support, kept it going, and then here we are with two spaces. This space in particular came out of one of our collective members had passed away from COVID in June 2020 and left us in charge of all of his books and records in a one-bedroom apartment in Inwood, 4 storage units. And it's just through love that they've been recirculated. We moved it all here. And everything that you see on the used books are all pay what you can, minimum $1. And also we have some new books near the front counter. Some from authors who are in the audience. And so best way you can support this space, the main space, and all that we do offsite in the community, and co-created by the community since it's run by a collective of 70 volunteers and a few others that have kept it going for as I said, the 15th anniversary is coming up this summer. The best way you can support is always to buy books. Buy books by the authors who are here, buy the journal issue that's coming out today that we're celebrating. Or, if not, you can make a donation. Also, I just want to say thanks, special shout out, especially to Angie Cruz, founder of Aster Literary Journal and board member of Word Up Community Bookshop, and just like all around supporter in all kinds of ways over the years, for everything she's done, both through the journal, through everyone who's worked on the journal, through the journal, outside of the journal, and just like everyone in the literary community that has been touched by you and you've touched. I think it's great. I'm so happy to always celebrate everything you do, and I'm excited for everything else that's going to happen at the panel and reading and more.
Thank you so much. I'm Angie Cruz. For those of you who don't know me. All right. And, I'm going to try to be really quick because we want to get to the conversation and we want to get to the music. I want to quickly thank Vern and everyone in the Word Up team because you always pull through for us and it's just wonderful. And all the volunteers that are here and helping to staff this and set it up and everything. So thank you. I first spoke to Karina about collaborating on this issue 5 years ago, I think. We were at a residency. She was telling me about this amazing work that she was doing with Danielle. And I was like, well, if you ever need a home, you could always come to Asterix. 5 years later, here we are. So that makes me very happy. I am thrilled to work with Danielle Amir Jackson and Karina del Valle Swarsky. I have learned so much from you, and that you've trusted us with this incredible and important work. Thank you, Chandri Ray, who is my managing editor and has really been working a lot to get this done on time for this launch. So we're celebrating this woman's work, which is about the invisible labor of putting something together. And Chandri, you're a huge part of that. So I bow to you. I cannot think of a better day to do this. Dike Valentine's Day. I'm going to rename it Loving Up All the Women in My Life Day. I love that I'm here at Recirculation. This is a very special place for me. And please support it. You could become a member. It doesn't cost that much, and it really does help keep the space alive, which actually has flexed so many ways to help the community outside of recirculating books. I mean, for every issue you can imagine. So for those of you who don't know Karina del Valle Swarsky, where have you been? She's a writer, translator, and now editor officially, and also wannabe backup dancer. I had to put that in because I just think it's funny, and I follow her on Instagram. She dances sometimes. She's written for the Paris Review, New York Times, and New Yorker, won a ton of awards, and I am so excited about her debut essay collection, The Other Island, forthcoming from Riverhead. Can't wait for that book to be out in the world. Danielle Amir Jackson is Memphis-born writer and editor whose essays have appeared in The Atlantic, The Guardian, The New York Times, and Book Forum, to name some of the many, many, many places she's published. She is the recipient of numerous prizes for both her work and editorial work. And she has a forthcoming book too, Honey's Grill, about women in the blues. I encourage you all to look up their work and just follow them because they're amazing. Okay, and thank you, Shamira and Joseph and Sheila for being here. What an honor. And I just can't wait for this conversation. So I'm just gonna shut up and take it.
Thank you so much, Angie and Chandri and all kinds of other people that had their hands in this magazine, Amanda, Adriana, as well as people that we bounced ideas off along the way. It really is a contagious conversation, and I'm so happy to be here with Danielle, who has been one of the most important people in my intellectual life over the last 7 years. I don't know how long we've known each other, maybe longer now.
Probably almost 10 years.
Yeah, almost 10 years. And this is really meaningful because Danielle and I first met through editing each other's work. And the piece that Danielle edited for me, I actually interviewed Christian for that piece. So lots of people connected here. And it was about Puerto Rican backup dancers in New York, a kind of genealogy of Puerto Rican backup dancers in New York. And Danielle just knew so much, both about the context of those women and about the practice that they embody and all the other practices connected to it. And out of some of those conversations, I feel like we've always been talking about women's world making and archiving work that's not always recognized as the art object itself, especially with hip hop and reggaeton. Often it's the male superstars. I mean, I don't have to tell you Bad Bunny mania, right? But I'm also thinking about, his girlfriend who first put him on to independence movement literature. I'm thinking about the choreographer who did the whole aerial scene with the light poles, Kiani del Valle. There are so many people, and Danielle and I wanted to really place these people center stage, to think about the journalists, people like Dream Hampton, people like Raquel Z. Rivera, and even in my reporting on Bad Bunny specifically, I was like, wow, all these journalists covering him have been women, and that's true.
All of the journalists, the PR folks, the A&Rs who contribute to putting their records together and find musicians and find producers and book the studio time. So we really wanted to just put all those folks in the background, in the front, in homage to what women's work is.
Exactly. So, we wanted to bring some people together to respond to that theme, and 3 of them are here with us tonight. But it's also meaningful that we're in New York, and the diaspora is involved in making this music.
Yep. So basically, we decided to talk about hip hop and reggaeton just because we were already working on pieces about these culture ways, and even though, as Karina said, even though the mainstream media talks about Bad Bunny and Kendrick Lamar, a busy hive, which is what we've been calling it, of backup workers have continued to fuel these ecosystems. And I guess I'll start introducing our panel. We have Shamira Ibrahim, a Brooklyn-based culture writer by way of Harlem, Canada, and East Africa, who explores identity, cultural production, and technology. Sheila Maldonado, author of the poetry collection That's What You Get and One Bedroom Solo. She's a Cantamundo Fellow and a Creative Capital Awardee. Born in Brooklyn, raised in Coney Island, the daughter of Armando and Vilma of El Progreso, Honduras. She lives in El Alto, Manhattan.
And this is Joseph Earl Thomas, who is a writer and professor, the author of Sink, a third-person memoir, and God Bless You, Otis Spunkmeyer, a first-person novel that won the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize. Sometimes he teaches about video games, sometimes he teaches about queer theory, and we're very happy to have him with us tonight.
So these are a few folks who are in the issue, and just the theme of women's work in hip hop and reggaeton in the culture, in the foodways, and in the choreography. All these like illustrious writers interpreted the theme a whole bunch of different ways. So we wanted to kind of give you a flavor of that and also let you hear their voices. So we'll just start. First, I would love to hear from y'all. What is your connection to the theme of, or the idea of women's work in this music and in this culture, and in this space? We're uptown. So what is your connection to that? And please give us a flavor of your work. Maybe that will be the answer.
I'm realizing, because I sat next to Danielle, I'm going first, but it's fine. It was like a slow dawning, you know? So, as you can tell by the multiple Carmen Sandiego as locations in my bio, I have roots in like a lot of different places, but honestly, what I consider a home, if you ask me, is Harlem. I grew up in Harlem. I grew up just a handful of blocks away from here, so like this area is very familiar and intimate for me. Used to go to the library on 160th Street. My elementary school is on 146th Street, you know, so this is pretty much like my home base. My mom is actually still waiting for me on 159th Street right now, but that's neither here nor there. But so Harlem is very much part of my DNA, and a large part of what I do when I do public writing is trying to find different ways to bring different Black stories to life, right? As someone who grew up working class, I think a lot of times the romanticization of New York kind of smudges that part of it. And so I try to find different ways to talk about the lives that I've lived and the lives that my friends have lived, and give it enough weight as we do, you know, the mysticism and the, you know, whimsy of someone who lives in West Village, right? And hip hop is something that is very fundamental to me because I grew up around it, right? Like, I came here to the US when I was 5, and the first record I ever held in my hand was, well, the first record was actually Robin S.'s Show Me Love on cassette, right? But the second record was Cisco's Unleash the Dragon, which no, I was like, let me finish the sentence.
That's
but like,
you
know, definitely a moment in time. It makes it very clear that I grew up in the early 90s, and like a very specific era in New York where, you know, you can walk down the block and hear the boombox blaring everywhere. You can have that osmosis and assimilation. It was really what introduced me to Black America, right? You know, and it's very much part of how I view New York, and it's very much how I view my experience in America and the world, right? And so as much as I can, I try to honor that, and try to find little pockets around that. I've been talking for long enough, so I'll talk a little bit about my piece and maybe read like one paragraph. So what I focused on as a result is I wrote about light feet, which is like a very specific subculture that came out of Harlem, specifically out of the basketball courts, and turned into its own dance format as well as its own music format, right? So like there's light feet dance, there's light feet music, there's light feet shows, right? A lot of people, if you aren't aware of what light feet is, you've probably referred to them as Showtime dancers on the train, right? You know, that is very much the spirit of what light feet music is. It's high BPM, obviously light on your feet, really syncopated movements that really allow people to express themselves in an improvisational way. And it very much started from trying to create entertainment during halftime shows at EBC games, so at Kingdom or at Rucker Park, right? And I used to be at Rucker Park every year, watching the EBC games every year. My mom has in our living room, like a tiny photo of her next to Shaq when he pulled up. My mom is all of 5'5", by the way, so it's like a real comedy to see, but and so I wanted to find a way to like honor something that matters to me, that matters to, you know, how I grew up, and still a way that is like an unofficial call and response in New York as to knowing who belongs to this city, right? So if you're at a club and you hear somebody yell out, "No music," you know, people know how to respond to that, right? If you're at a club and someone tells you or plays the sped up version of Drake's Light Up, that means that you're ready to do some light feet, right? You know, these sort of different indicators that really show home to me, right? So I'll just read a paragraph because I've been talking way too long.
We love to hear it.
But, okay. Already here. Okay. So, in cities throughout Black America, communities were finding ways to alchemize their novel metropolitan funk into regionally specific corporeal expression. From the deceptively deliberate fluidity of Washingtonians as they beat their feet at bustling go-go's, to the dazzlingly frenetic syncopation of Chicago footwork. And Harlem, USA was no exception to this phenomenon of metabolizing a rapidly changing urban grid into movement. The agility required to execute the movements with both flair and precision didn't just reflect the quick twitch motions of the hard courts. It drew on, sorry. There we go. It drew on the same muscles and tendons needed to pivot through a humming crowd without interruption, flattening and expanding the space one's body could occupy among the masses. Years of contorting the body to fit within an urban milieu, quick-paced strides matching the rhythm of the city, bobs and weaves to avoid collisions, maintaining balance on a crowded train, found new purpose in a burgeoning form of dance just as electric and fast-paced as any rush hour commute.
Okay, so this is a good question. And when you brought up Unleash the Dragon, I was like, oh, yeah. So also early 90s. So my aunt, who was my sort of best friend and confidant, got me Unleash the Dragon. And then also there was like the TLC and Eve obsessions, like sort of very early on, that meant a lot to me. And so my entire, like education or pedagogical experience has been through women. I mean, there's this sort of obviousness of like, black folks, a lot of Latin folks are like matriarchal cultures or what have you. But I was always sort of like bewildered by when I would encounter people out in the world and they would say like, I'm learning this from this guy or whatever, but I thought to myself, I never really learned anything from other men until I was maybe like 30 something. And this is, it's a weird thing, and so, for example, the person who first suggested that I should write anything, the first people who took me seriously were all women. And so that meant a lot for who I was paying attention to, who I became obsessed with, who I thought was sort of worth listening to, or whose sort of, confidence I should be invested in for the most part. And, that it started through my aunt, through teachers, friends, relationships, et cetera. That was always the case. And as a young person, a lot of sort of modes of feminization were projected onto me. For lots of reasons. And then it also became an interesting thing where I was a primary caregiver for children, so I was spending most of my time with my friends who were single mothers, were the people who I was spending most of my time with. And so it sort of continued all through that. And a lot of what I think about in my work sort of all the time is about like what sort of responsibilities masculine people have to find ways to engage in that conversation in serious ways. Without, also early 90s, so it's sort of like you have these two poles that exist. It's women like my mother, for example, and grandmother, who are like excessively denigrated as like horrible. This is like the women who Patrick Moynihan was writing about. And then on the other hand, it's like sort of the black women who I'm like, this is the smartest living person. It's like the Sylvia Winters and Saidiya Hartmans, et cetera, like those kinds of people. And that was sort of my life, sort of fluctuating around those poles of obsession, in particular, especially with regards to music. And that's sort of how I try and orient myself to that space for the most part. And then I'll just read a short poem that I had written for the issue, and thank y'all all for having me too. And it's Girlhood, or So What If Diamond is a Stripper Name, after Celine Sciamma's film Girlhood. Don't act like you never met them, withering bright across the Atlantic's resistance to time. At our age, this tall Rican girl kissed my neck to pawn the replay out in public, which made me just small enough to dance. And it didn't hurt how I was taught to imagine. Who hasn't connected to these black girls just one little ocean away? If I'm crying, it indicates at least a minor investigative effort. Like, if there is something between the subject of this film and the rules for observing ecstasy. My own mother would agree, having stripped me of any girlhood for what she knew. Chili was too thin, and I liked and also looked then too much like her. Puberty bears down on my own daughter, and she looks to me in this movie for comfort. I'm not indifferent to the production of diamonds, but more hung up with their institution of feeling, like the fake ones worn in one ear, the left, on a boy-child's quest to procure the affections of the baddie next door, Almasi, whose name he could never pronounce. I ignored this song till 4 girls who looked like my mom and them thrummed it through the hotel hallways. Let this also be a renaissance in light. Damn right they were beautiful. But if we could remove all the horrible shit, never mind. I felt fine too for Rihanna's big old beautiful forehead, for Pond the replay that night, for having snuck into the after hours death knell, into some sign of myself with hips and thighs that wants and needs color, beyond the prominence of this or that line, like my niggas don't dance, they just used to be gold lit. You know what? I like to watch all kinds of things unfold in the slender complexities of just a few minutes, and I never tell. Sometimes difference is wearing down as it builds my one son up at 7, furious at the discovery of his boyhood. Someone taught him not to dance, and I did not kill them, despite my being an American man. We call that restraint. Who among us has the strength to extend this scene? For what I'm worth, one shaggy hotel bed too many, and licks on the neck to tender everything till we meet in that upper room. I'd like to see it before it's gone, before it costs too much.
I was nervous, but now I'm not nervous because that was like a completely meditative moment. That was great. I'm Sheila Maldonado, and I was a big part of this issue. I'm really proud to be part of this issue. I really appreciate like being asked to be part of it. And I have an interview in there with Karina. We're like talking to each other about just making a space for the peripheral, I think, really. And I really appreciate the idea of what holds this up. And I got lucky enough to write a review of Cheryl Boyce Taylor's poetry book that was like an homage and a sort of an integration of her life with Fife from A Tribe Called Quest, and that's her son. He passed away, way too early, and he's basically my age. I'm the age of hip hop. That's really why I'm here.
Miles was going to be here too.
Yeah, and I have to hold that up for Miles. And I brought a bunch of magazines from my
Intergenerational
archive. Yeah, sure. Great, thanks. The old people will accept all the kind titles, the kind labels. I brought a bunch of magazines. Miles is in some of like he mentioned this cover from XXL in his piece. The interview of Sheena Lester, who was the editor-in-chief of XL and Rap Pages. Basically getting to help transform my hoarding into an archive in this interview. And
it already was an archive.
I appreciate that, again, intergenerational archive as opposed to old hoarder is what this whole situation is doing for me, and I really am grateful for that. I was behind the scenes in a lot of magazines, including hip-hop magazines in the late 90s. And I really just wanted to be an artist, That was the whole thing. I mean, did I want to be a rapper? Sure. Who doesn't want to be a rapper? But, we're gonna, integrate that idea into any art we do, especially as someone from a hip-hop generation. It's the predominant art of my time. Born and raised in Brooklyn, the defining thing. So, it's in the water, in the blood, all the things. My family came from Central America and Honduras and El Salvador specifically, and they really weren't about that life totally, or any life. I don't really get what lives they were about sometimes, but I was about this life here in New York, and New York helped to define me in ways that I can't ever erase. So I'm gonna read a few things. The interview's a lot of rambling like that too, but it was fun. It was hella fun. It's not stiff at all.
There's some tea in there.
There's, it's like medium tea.
It's a medium brew. It's neither a light brew nor a strong brew. It's just strong enough to not get nobody fired.
Yeah, it's a whole history, though.
I don't have
really.
lawyers. I don't have riches. I can't tell all the tea without lawyers or riches.
But
anyway.
it's also a history,
minor.
A history of multicultural magazines
Sure.
through this archive that you still have. And in the 90s, for example, that we're talking about, there were a whole lot that got published, even for a couple of issues. So you have a record of that. And I just want to thank you because, without a record, what are we? And I think we're dealing with a lot of erasure right now. So just being able to document that there was a time when Latin Girl, was on the newsstand.
When Latin Girl magazine existed, the Latina 17. Anyway, it was fire though. It was really cute. Anyway, I'm gonna read a couple of poems. This is like some of this stuff in this first book is really stuff I did in the downtime during fact checking at magazines. Like a lot of my poems really were that. I just wanted to be part of the culture. The negative representation of Sheilas in the media. Thanks to Ready for the World, people have mocked me since 6th grade. Oh, Sheila, sung humping like a dog on a leg. From then on, I became acutely aware of the popular portrayal of my name and all its hookerish connotations. Some more examples. On Midnight Marauders, one of Tribe Called Quest's albums, Fife, horny, calls up one of his hooker hoes. Oh, yo, Sheila's home. On Frasier, Roz, the show slut, poses as a Sheila, the sleazy other woman, to help Frasier's father make the lady he's been seeing jealous. In Virtuosity, a Denzel Russell Crowe movie where they're virtually real, a program called Sheila 2.1 is basically a computer skank. The Last Straw, on Will and Grace, thinking up baby names in the sperm insemination office. Sheila comes up and Will says, Sheila's a whore's name. The nurse in the room protests, that's my name, but I am a whore. An exception. Sheila E., an actual Sheila, who sings of honest hoes on the glamorous life, turns it around, actually does work, is a real musician, can really play the drums, the timbales, the conga all at once, can channel misunderstood sexual energy in order to rock a crowd. Finally, a role model. I'll do one more for the second book, just to get that over with. Oh, blah, blah. If I can find it. Oh, wait, I want to do the Drake one. I'll do the Drake one.
He's part of this woman's work.
I'm not condoning Drake. Just because I do the Drake one.
Everyone relax. We see you at the club.
Whatever. I'm not condoning anything. This is actually about, I had bad allergies on the day that Highline Bling came out. So that's what this is. Drop day. Today, a day of drowning and dying in postnasal drip and Dominican Drake. Postnasal Drake, Dominican drip. A day delirious and drizzy, a drizzle of drizzy, drowning me, drowsy from drug interactions, Drake interactions, dextromethorphan and Drake. Dominican drowsy in post-racial drip, drowning in dream, dropping in dizzy, drip, Drake, drip.
Look, respect for Sheila's. Also, is she? That was great. I was gonna ask like a question about, how the music, like the form of the music has like influenced your work, but then it's like for Sheila, it's like too direct just now because she was rapping, she was doing her rap. I'm gonna kind of reframe that question a little bit, although you guys can answer it if you want to. The kind of like, I think we write about the music, but I'm partly interested in like the way these genres have shaped how you write, So that's one option. The other option to answer is some of you I know work in multiple forms. And that's partly the hustle, right? Like having to stay flexible and, do a 500-word piece and do some editorial work on the side and maybe whatever. You were talking about you only had time to write the poems on your breaks from the fact checking. But I guess I'm wondering kind of what those different forms have like given you or taught you about kind of different modes of expression. But you could pick one of those two to answer. Anybody?
I'm not going first this time. Just saying that.
I was hoping too. I was like, yeah, go ahead.
Let me set that straight real quick.
You love to talk. Don't lie.
I think it has to do with work. So music was one. So like the highest sort of level of education in my household was like middle school. So everybody was either, every generation, I feel like we're working more hours per day or something like that. And I used to work at a lot of places in healthcare. Another, I was a CNA for a long time, for example, right? And so it was like all of the older women who taught me how to be a CNA at this place. But those kinds of jobs where you're at work for like 12 to 16 hours a day, one of the few things that you can do is listen to music a lot, all the time. And so the music was the thing that was always there, that sort of never left me. It was the thing that I was able to listen to enough times to think through versus, I didn't have as much time to sort of watch avant-garde films or whatever, like, nor was that the sort of culture that I came from. In the early 90s, when everybody's at work, that was the sort of, it was both a form of release and there was a lot of reverence for the music in a lot of ways. And I think about that at the line level in pretty much everything I write, even though initially it was sort of more of an unconscious set of actions. But for me, it is, I was talking to a friend of mine about this other book that was really popular, and they're like, I can't read this because this person has no ear, and I often sort of feel that way, where I'm like a first paragraph into, I was like, oh, you never listened to music before, Like now when I meet students, I'm like, you've never listened to music. Let's start there, like let's pull out the speaker now.
Or do you read your work out loud?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's also a question that I often have when editing folks.
Yeah, everything, the whole book. Like, so I'll write, and then when I'm revising the next day, I read the whole thing out loud first, and then try to continue from there. And I always suggest to folks to do it too.
I think you think I would have come up with an answer by now, but I just landed on it. Okay, I think that for me, music, especially just like the music I grew up around, has really helped me kind of harness a sense of spectacle in writing. Like, it's not just about what you say, it's how you say it, how you deliver it, right? It's like, to your point, like, you read your words aloud because you want to feel the rhythm in the sentence, right? You want to feel when you're building up the pressure, the tension before you make your big reveal. Like, it's the showmanship in the writing, that really kind of allow you to be singular in a way that, like, we could all be writing about the same thing, but how do we deliver it differently? And I think for me, growing up in a neighborhood where like spectacle was the game, you know what I mean? Like, I'm talking, you're at a bus stop and a man pulls up and is like, if I was with you, you would never have to put your feet on the street ever again in your life, right? Like, just like the level of like excess and like bravado and like chest thumping, that kind of all comes together, right? You think about that and how I think when you're trained as a critic sometimes, you're trained in the space of restraint. And you're trained in a space of really focusing on the semantic and focusing on, having the surgical level of precision. And I still appreciate that. Like, I still am the person who will sit and like look at 3 different versions of the same word and see which one makes the most sense. But beyond that, it's like, how can I make you feel the way I feel when I know about this topic, right? How can I communicate this excitement? How can I communicate this danger? How can I communicate something that is not just about understanding the mechanics of something, but more so the spirit that it embodies? And I think music, more so than anything, has really helped me understand that like it really is more than just like you copying and pasting words and putting them to the page. It's really helping you express like that magic that comes out of you when you are introduced to something for the first time. And for me, writing is always a journey of curiosity as well as music. So I think that's how they come together for me.
I do want to say really quick that this is the first time I'm meeting, I think, Shamira in real life, but I've known you on Twitter for many years. I mean, RIP to me being on Twitter, but back when I was there, I do feel like Shamira like brought a kind of like brings together like a devastating criticality with like that humor and showmanship. Like the tweet is also this genre that really is like, I mean, yeah, it has something hip hop about it, and like you stood out to me. You had star power there for me in terms. I was like, it's bars, all bars on this girl's feed,
Unfortunately, I have not given up that narcotic yet, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
I think that also that's something that unites like how that's like our vision for this edition, and that we wanted people and we want in our work for when we're writing about art or thinking about art, we want the experience that we're sharing with other people and the words to be just as sensuous and textured as the art that we're writing about or talking about. So like how and it seemed everybody seemed really aligned, and the community I feel like that we shaped on the page and all the editorial work also seemed to carry that sensibility, and I really appreciate that. And that's also part of the music. And another editor often tells me like, you got to do a drum solo before you do this solo, like give me a bum before your big reveal. So that's like another musical clue. I am going to switch a little bit because we're talking about these two very interrelated, connected communities and genres of music and styles and traditions of music and culture that are known for a lot of things. And we're talking about women in these scenes, right? And feminine people and feminized labor. I think these genres are also known for not treating these feminine people or feminized laborers that well. The genres, the traditions are known also for misogyny and violence against women. But at the same time, I feel like we're a community of people who are showing an appreciation and a reverence for these genres and traditions. So I would love to hear, how do y'all reconcile that tension as fans and journalists?
I would have to say that I sometimes felt like I was a little bit like in a kind of psychosis, like listening to hip hop. Like I'm like, or like I split. Like I became the dudes. I was the dudes. Like, and I didn't question, like, you know, saying bitches and hoes and all that. Like, and I do it naturally all the time. Or any of it. Like, I really could, like, yeah, it was just becoming that person. And yeah, it felt like dysmorphia of some sort. Like, they really did. I always had, it was just like easy. Like, to me, memorization is easy, language is easy, like music is language, and it all came natural, and I could just mimic and repeat. I was just like a natural, all that. The questioning of it, yeah, I think it took a long time. I think even in this process of like doing the interview, I was like not fully even accepting like the role I had in this, you know, world.
Right.
Like I was in my own head about a lot of what happened, like, or what I witnessed or what I heard. You know, the relationships were terrible for the most part. I was there for the art and the page. I wanted things to appear and be produced, but sometimes I was sort of disconnected with, like, from what I was living in it. But I mean, and I wasn't so disconnected that I didn't like sort of step away from it. Couldn't be in it forever. Yeah. Like basically I'm here because I was a senior editor at Blaze for 4 months, and that was enough. And like, it was the second magazine of Vibe in the late 90s after Biggie and Tupac died, and nobody knew what to do with hip hop, and if that's how it felt. And actually reading the issue, and like the first thing I had to fact check and copy it was the mixtape, Grief mixtape, which is this amazing like compilation of songs, and like also dealing with, like, talk about intergenerational, like having reading it through your eyes, which is like you're 10, 15 years younger, and what it means to y'all and how you interpret it, like started to change how I connected to it. And that mixtape thing was just beautiful to me, because I just felt like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. It was a woman's eyes. It was at least 3 female rappers in there who are gone, who never made it and like anywhere, like never like were visible in this way. I knew one of them, which is Hurricane G, like, who just passed away, and like I started to like kind of feel like those women, like, who were kind of lost women or some so-called lost, you know. And I was like, oh, maybe I should think about that. Like, maybe, like, it was like this process was a part of the process of seeing like the place of women. Like there was a moment in the interview, I'm just like, I'm just really peripheral. I said, like, I was just like, but that was the idea, like that. Why were we peripheral? You know. And I was like, oh,
and
damn.
Is that the truth?
Is that the truth?
If you're holding it all up and holding it all together, the periphery is really not the periphery.
Right. And I felt that, you know, in all ways in my life, in many ways, like just being from a world, like even within Latino, a group of people that are peripheral, like this is Latino stuff, and I'm latching on to Black American things, and I'm not accepting what that means. Like, that means I take Black Americans as Americans, like that's the defining American to me. Like, I need to say that and be clear about that, and that's Like, but where was I in that? Like, you know, and I think I take myself, like I say in the interview, as a case study. Like, I don't mean to use the I all the time. It's just I live in this body and I do that. But like, you know, I know that I represent many people, like when I say these things, so, or starting to understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much from you, and like that first conversation when we met at Canto Mundo, we started talking about this. So for me, like you've always been an authority and also like a transmitter of histories that I was curious about. So for me, you've always had a central role in understanding the New York I was moving back into, you know, after my mother and grandmother had been here. But I did want to say about Christina's mixtape, there's this moment I always think about where she's at Magic City with her friends, and there's a dancer at Magic City who she recognized as like, she says like, oh, you know, she used to fuck with my man. But that, like, I think it's her husband, right? Christina's, or her boyfriend.
I think that's a story. So this is the second to last piece in the edition by Christina K. Robinson, a writer from New Orleans, who talks a lot about 1999 and Juvenile, and also all these women rappers who are no longer with us, including the rapper who is on, the first voice you hear on Beyonce's Renaissance is one of those. Yeah, that's Princess Loco, who passed away right after that album came out, or right before that album came out.
I mean, even if that part is fictional, like the moment is like she and that man is now gone, and like it's the two of them are talking about him, and sometimes we're like, you know, left carrying on the story, you know, including of the men who've passed away. I think that it might be a good time to take some questions from the audience. Also, if anybody has some questions. I know there's more to say about the questions that Danielle has already posed too, but I just wanted to make sure we made room before we wrap things up here. No question too small, too peripheral. They're like, we're here for the DJ and the empanadas. We're not here trying to think. Sorry? Could you introduce? Oh, yeah. Where is he? Is he here? He is. He's not here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I did want to introduce our DJ, Christian Martir, who's actually also an amazing collector of magazines and Nuyorican ephemera. He does a lot of amazing cultural programming in the city, and then also he used to DJ this party, a party called Rosie Perez. That's the name of the party. Kind of a legendary New York series, and I think the name of that party kind of captures something of the sense that it's like, well, who's setting the vibe, right? Tonight you are setting the vibe here on the dance floor. We're really glad that you came out. And unless there's any final questions or anything oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess my question was for Joseph, right? I guess what you were saying about sort of, you know, navigating learning from women and learning from femmes, I think resonated. And I think one of the things that I was wondering if you could speak to is sort of how you know, sort of square that, you know, that truth of like women being and femme people being like the source of knowledge, and also like how you carry that in like a masculine body of trying to like, you know, having all this knowledge that's been conferred to you from women, but not trying to take up space in like predominantly, you know, women or femme-led environments, and how you sort of, you know, how you move through that, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good question. Most of the time I don't feel like I have to say anything if no one is asking me a question directly. No, I don't mean, I mean in the general sense, I think that there's a lot of like, sort of expectations that one sort of speaks all the time and always to everything. It's funny, my old like MA thesis advisor who just came over my house to use my shower because her hot water heater broke, and it's a long story or whatever, but I knew her and we became close for a long time because she was one of the teachers who, I didn't have any childcare, and I wanted to go to graduate school. I had like quit the army, I wanted to go to graduate school. for like, humanities stuff or whatever. And like people were real hostile to like, I'm like, I don't have nobody who can watch my kids from 6 to 9 p.m. 3 days a week or whatever, right? But she was like, yeah, obviously bring them and they can do their homework or whatever. Like, I don't know if my daughter remembers some of those days. You were in there, your brother was in there too. You remember, okay. So yeah, in Aisha's class. And one of the things that she would always say, she would be like, I would be mad about something and I would be like describing it to her like a social situation or whatever. And she'd be like, like not everybody needs to know what you think and you don't always have to respond to everything. And it's true, like she would say it all the time. And she would also be like, yeah, there are these people who you love, like use that energy to them. And especially when you have a conflict that needs to be resolved, or if you think that they're, somebody is like being arguably like a little too grimy and you need to sort of say something. So it's a really like about the dispensations of energy and deciding where you want to sort of use that energy and where you should be like, yeah, it's actually not necessarily useful. And for me, it's super duper local, right? So like I watch my neighbor's kids, but like there are people whose kids I don't watch no more because I'm just like, no, not you, right? But it is about sort of making those really consecrated decisions and being able to live with certain kinds of consequences that involve sort of distancing yourself from certain forms of like masculine communities too that you can't rely on anymore.
I think there's one more. Let's do that last question. Oh, hi, Deb.
Hi. Thank you, Sheila, for representing those of us who remember Black Widow magazine. But actually, this is a question for the editors because I know both of you are such, accomplished writers, and I was wondering, like, what you learned in the process of actually doing editorial work. What were some of the things you learned either about yourself, or about the field, or about the process of your own writing, or others? I'd love to hear.
Wow. Okay.
I can start. First of all, I learned how hard it is to put out a magazine. No, seriously, how much work, how many different people have to like make sacrifices and communicate with one another. And like I have done some like contributing writer work, but in the sense of like, what if you're not just in charge of like, I've worked at magazines before, of just editing the piece? Or what if you're not just in charge of, whatever, but like building those relationships, like figuring out who's going to do the fact checking, who's going to pick up the empanadas, who's going to follow up with the writer that is dope, but like never makes a deadline, like, no, it wasn't Shamira.
It actually wasn't.
It actually wasn't any of you. But I would also say, like, I just became more convinced of the need for, like, this could be, like, 10 times longer. There's actually, like, at least 10 topics in my mind that I wanted somebody to go find some of the only girls in the rock study crew, the B girls. Like, there's so many different lines of inquiry to pursue, and it made me really feel like, wow, actually, it's so hard to, like, get these types of pieces greenlit. A lot of our media ecosystem is so oriented around like the celebrity profile, or if cultural outlets even exist anymore. And I was just feeling like, wow, I'm so grateful there are people like Danielle and people like the other people who contributed to this issue attending to these stories, because like truly, like if we don't do it, like sometimes it really feels like no one will, and so feeling a kind of redoubled commitment to, whether it's self-archiving or just like thinking about like the people in your network or in the stories that loved ones tell, and taking those histories seriously that make us and that form our sensibilities.
Yeah, that's great. I feel the same way. I think, I have worked at a quarterly magazine before, so I got the chance to kind of let things go and let things simmer, and then realize that I had another issue to possibly improve or iterate, and then maybe the next one I could, have a particular artist or something that I really wanted. So I think it's always in creating a magazine or a book or anything creative, it's always an exercise in letting something go. And I think that's also a lesson that I'm learning in my writing too. Like I am interested in explaining a little bit less. And that doesn't necessarily always gel with the imperatives of like mainstream publications who really need you to give a lot of context all the time for everything you say, especially if you're a Black person or marginalized person in any way. You got to explain what Black Eyed Peas are, you know?
So crazy.
So, so you know, it's just an ongoing exercise in just letting something be and letting kind of the poetry of what happened exist in the moment. Like, this is a document of a moment in time. It happened to be 5 years in the making, but it's a document of a moment in time, and hopefully there will be more of this work.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Really quickly, okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for this conversation. I just want to continue having this conversation. I just want to say that the work, I think, will have it has legs, and it's gonna go on forever. And I feel like part of the work of doing Asterix, I always say after each issue that I'm gonna stop doing it, because there's kind of this exhaustive quality where we were staying up really late at night. And people look at Asterix, and actually we only have one paid person, and it's 10 hours a week. Everyone else volunteers, right? So, you know, staying up and doing the work and with so much love and care, like, oh my God, we got to change this. No, we got to make this better. And Sheila bringing in the fact checks. And I'm like, oh, Sheila, God, could you stop being so rigorous? I just don't have the time. But it's beautiful because in the end, like, our work deserves that attention. And in reality, like, when I think about the grind of doing a lot of this work, it's just labor and it's invisible. Yeah. I also am like, it's good labor and it makes me feel closer to y'all. Like, I feel closer to y'all. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of cool. It's so intimate, you know? And we survived something. Yeah. And now we have something to show for it. So it's beautiful. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for working with me and just doing it together. And the issue is for sale. I don't even know if we have any left. We might not, because I think most of them sold. There might be a few left. You have some? We have 5 left. All the proceeds, all of them are going to go to Word Up. It's also going to be online next week. So you could just read it for free online. Follow us on asterixjournal.com, and you could check it out there. And again, follow all of these people. They're amazing.
Quick question. After these 5, that's it?
No, you can always order them.
Okay.
You can order them. Yeah, but it's also online, you know, like so. But you could order them. There are issues forever. You could order them. All right. Okay, thank you so much. And Christian, we're turning it around. And I hope everyone stays to dance. Okay.